Welcome to a special roundtable discussion to cap off the 2013 football season here on the Center County Report. I'm Willie Jungles. I'm joined by three of the best guys on the beat: Sean Fitz of Lions 247, Nate Bauer of Blue White Illustrated, and Mike Poorman of StateCollege.com. Guys, thanks for coming on.
Our pleasure.
Hey.
The best three?
Yes. Not appropriate.
Three of the best.
Qualified.
I guess the first question, I'll direct it to Mike. You guys jump in. The difference between a 7-5 season compared to a 6-6 season in your eyes?
A win over Wisconsin, which is a big win, which is momentum, which is perception, which I think even gives O'Brien more carte blanche to move forward with what he wants to do and how fast he wants to do it.
Yeah, and I'm certainly to have two signature wins under your belt for the season in the Michigan game and the Wisconsin game. I mean, those two things to me, you know, they could have gone 5-7, and with those same wins, it would have been just as important. I mean, it would have been essentially the same result to say, hey, you know, we can compete with the best that there is in the conference.
Is that the recruiting, I guess, perception out there, you know, that they beat Wisconsin and Michigan? They look more at that compared to the overall record?
Yeah, I think leaving a lasting impression like they did going out beating Wisconsin gives you a lot of momentum heading into the offseason. I mean, December 1st through signing day is really just a rush to the finish line, and to hit it like that is something really big moving forward with Penn State.
Now, Nate, you've talked a lot about this, but the expectations of the program with the outsiders and with O'Brien, what should the expectations be for the outsiders, and what's the expectations that Bill O'Brien has for this program?
I think it's kind of complicated. I think that Bill O'Brien's expectations for the program are extremely high, and I think that he wants to reach those expectations. You know, he wants to win every game. He thinks he can compete with every team that Penn State plays. That said, I think there's also a context that he would like to stay in the back of people's minds when they don't meet those expectations, that says, hey, this is what we're dealing with. This is, you know, the best hand that we can play in poker is, you know, two pairs, you know, instead of a full house. They literally don't have access, you know, to the numbers that they need to be able to put out a winning hand every game. So,
Yeah, I think that's part of his frustration is not being able. He's trying to communicate that message, but people on a lot of different levels not receiving it, so he has to go back again and again and again.
Sure. I mean, it's you see in a lot of the reactions that he's had this year, especially in press conferences. You know, I mean, I can pretty distinctly remember, you know, feeling fortunate about a win. I think it was after the Illinois game. And I mean, he just went off. He was not happy to hear that word, because it's, you know, they're extremely happy to win, but they're not lucky to win. They work to even be in the conversation, to even be competing, you know, on this level, because they're so shorthanded.
For recruits coming into this program, what's their expectations going forward?
Well, I think the expectation for recruits is that they can see the field early and make an impact, and I think that's really, when you're a 17, 18-year-old kid, that's really what you see the most is how can I come in and make my own impact on the program. Getting the scholarships back is a big thing. When you look forward, this is a chance to deepen the talent pool, and I think that's a big thing. You surround yourself. Christian Hackenberg now has more weapons to play with. The defense now has more athletes, and that's going to trickle down to special teams. So, you know, there's opportunity abound for Penn State, especially with the lessening the restrictions.
Now, total speculation, but if they lift the bowl ban come September, what does that do for the overall recruit?
That's big. The sanctions, I think the scholarships were the biggest thing. That's absolutely, this is the biggest thing that Bill O'Brien could have gotten back. But the bowl ban, this is just one more thing you could show that they're on equal footing with these programs around the country and around the conference, and I think that's a big thing moving forward.
Now, 2 consecutive winning seasons for Bill O'Brien amidst the sanctions. There was obviously interest from the NFL last year with the Eagles and the Browns, and you would think that would continue with teams that fire head coaches. They would come after him. He's one of the best coaches in college football that could go to the NFL. We'll start with you. From a recruiting standpoint, how worried are they, or how worried are recruits that he is going to jump?
Well, with the seasons that he's put together, the whispers are always going to be there. They're not going to go away.
Right.
And you know, as much as he can say, I'm going to stick around for all your 4 years, I mean, the NFL is still the big prize here. So, you know, there's always that possibility that that might help. But, you know, for now, O'Brien's going to try and be as upfront as he can with him and say that he's trying to stick it out through the sanctions. He's trying to, you know, sort of see the guys that he brought in go through, graduate, and you know, we'll see if that takes off.
Nate?
He doesn't close doors on himself ever.
Right.
You know, it's extremely important for him to leave avenues open for himself, for his family, for the program. You know, and I think that you know, the way that he delicately words things sometimes shows that, yeah, you know, you can't close yourself off. I mean, he doesn't want to be, and he says it all the time, that he doesn't want to be coaching when he's 75 and when he's 85. You know, so this vision, you know, it's such a contrast to Joe Paterno. You know, you had this vision of longevity at Penn State. I mean, everything stayed the same for decades and decades and decades. You know, he's not going to guarantee that, and you know, I think that's it's going to be really interesting to see how fans embrace that, you know, this year and moving forward. Whether he stays or goes, either way, you know that there's going to be some type of flirtation there. Somebody's going to report that you know, a team is pursuing him.
He's an ideal guy when you have openings, the Giants, maybe the Jets, probably not the Steelers, but a certain type of coach, he fits that mold. And I think you guys are right. That's never going to go away. And he's not an absolutist. He never says this person's going to do this, we're going to do that, this is the way it is. He knows every word is going to be parsed. And he has not put himself in those situations. And I think he's learned that he's not going to. He'll just go balls to the wall today.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what tomorrow brings.
He never says never.
That's right.
Like we do.
And this is major college football. This happens everywhere, and I think that's something that Penn State fans need to grasp. Is you're not going to have a coach here for 40 years, and you know, it goes along with assistants as well.
Right. You wrote this in your article at the end of the year about the fact that Penn State does not have a president in place, and a new president that could come in could bring in a new athletic director. Where does all that factor into this equation?
Well, I think there was a certain period of time where O'Brien sat back and waited, and now that we continue to wait. So I think even with his moves this week, he's saying, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm going full speed ahead. If they got a president here sometime, great. If they hire a different athletic director, great. But this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. Right now, it could be in a year from now, he's the longest tenured guy among everybody. Right. Incredible as it sounds.
Yeah, I think a lot of people saw you know, some of the coaching staff changes that happened this week as a signifier that, you know, he had a long-term plan in place, and that you know, this means, okay, he's definitely sticking around. I think what it actually is that Bill O'Brien is a guy who has multiple plans all working at once, and you know, for his own goals, for the goals for the program, you know, he's going at them. He's going to attack them because he doesn't sit around. He's certainly not a guy that sits on his hands. You know, when he wants to make moves, he does it. Right. He does it, and you know, to relatively good success at this point.
Yeah, I think his NFL plan is, I'm going to do the best I can. They know who I am. The better I do, they're going to come get me. I think that's his plan, because he has, you know, he had a sanction plan, and now it's a post-sanction plan, and then it's a championship plan. And then among all this, and I think we all know this, one of his biggest plans was retooling the entire football program. That had nothing to do with the sanctions. That was the underpinning of the whole big plan.
And no matter what, he's going to pour all of himself into those plans.
Now, Ron Vanderlyn it was said that he's moving on to other endeavors along with Charlie Fisher. We'll start with you, Fitz. From the common outsider, Ron Vanderlyn is regarded as a good recruiter and has recruited a lot of people and has been a really good linebacker coach here at Penn State. Navarro Bowman in the NFL, Sean Lee, the list goes on and on. From recruits, what was the reaction from them that he was let go?
Really not a lot, to be honest with you. I mean, Ron, you know, a good recruiter through the years, recruiting Philadelphia, South Jersey, Delaware as well. Had a lot of success in those areas, very pro-Penn State areas. So I think that's, when you're looking as a recruit, he's a guy that maybe had a little easier ship than some of the other guys. But, you know, give credit where credit's due. He's landed some talent over the years. Now, the way Penn State has approached things, they're putting multiple coaches on at a time. It's no longer just the regional guy sticks with his own recruits. Now you talk positions, you talk, you know, Bill O'Brien getting involved as the head coach. So it's much more of, I think, a team effort now that you see, and I think that's probably going to soften the blow for a guy like Ron Vanderlyn in leaving.
Nate, your reaction to Ron Vanderlyn moving on?
I think that this is going to sound like I'm putting it delicately, but, you know, changes within this program aren't necessarily a condemnation of that specific coach or a player or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, Bill O'Brien talks consistently, and you know this fit, you know, whether or not a player fits in recruiting to this program.
And you've said that extends to the coaching staff and
Absolutely.
the personnel all around.
Absolutely. I mean, it applies to secretaries.
At the front desk, absolutely.
I mean, it really does. It is the entire operation. If you are not on board with, you know, this kind of streamlined idea, you know, it's not to say that you don't want some type of healthy debate within your program. You know, that you want some kind of back and forth between certainly John Butler and Bill O'Brien. They talk about it all the time, how they argue with each other. You know, but at the same time, you don't want entirely different defensive philosophies, you know, kind of competing with each other when the head coach wants one defensive philosophy. He wants to go in a certain direction, and, you know, clearly Ron Vanderlyn and Charlie Fisher did not fit into that system.
Mike, you've covered Penn State for so long. Ron did a great job with the linebackers. Your thoughts on it?
Well, I think these guys are both right. I think there's one additional point is Nick Saban is not only someone that O'Brien admires, but that he talks to.
Right.
And Sean can tell you much more than I about how they've retooled their entire recruiting operation vis-a-vis what Saban does. You take a look at how he constructs his staff. Last night I went through the Alabama site. They have 2-3 first-year coaches this year for a team that won the national title. They have Mario Cristobal, excellent, up-and-coming head coach up until a year or two ago as their offensive line coach. Right. So Saban is doing that at the highest levels. Not saying that it's totally correct, but it gets results. And there's a roadmap, that he not only follows, but he knows the guy that wrote the map.
I think that there's a part of this too that O'Brien discussed previously in the season. He was asked about you know, kind of moving up his own ascension to becoming a head coach. I think that Bill O'Brien wants people around him that want to do more with their lives than just be a Penn State assistant coach or a Penn State, you know, office assistant, whatever it is.
A major diversion from the last staff that was here, obviously.
It's just, there's this idea of complacency and being satisfied with what you've already accomplished. And, you know, I think to him, he's never satisfied. Right. You know, and you see that in everything that he does. I mean, no matter what it is, he's not cranky like Saban is. You know, Saban is just miserable all the time. Bill O'Brien's not that. He's a guy who enjoys success in life, but he always wants more than what he currently has.
Well, I think this is a quote from Vanderlyn in the past. He came here expecting to be at Penn State for 4 years. It's 13. So that mindset that you talk about, that's where it was, and this is where it's at now.
It's Neverland. Penn State is Neverland. We all stay the same age here, all of us. I mean, it's, you know, it is what it is. But I mean, I think it certainly applies to the football program as well.
You look great for 46.
Thank you very much, Mike. You're always very complimentary.
Now, Fitz, Allen Robinson, a terrific year for him. There's a lot of rumors. Is he going to go to the NFL? Is he going to stay? We'll start with you. If he does decide to go, where does Penn State address that need in recruiting? Because if you take Allen Robinson away from the receiving corps this year, it was pretty bleak, to be fair.
Right, absolutely. And Allen Robinson, tremendous talent. It's going to be impossible to replace him with just one guy. But you know, Penn State's done a very good job addressing that need in the class of 2014. Three very quality wide receivers. Chris Godwin's a kid out of Delaware who, you know, is one of the top 250, 200 players in the country. Right. Can come in, probably the most physically ready to come in, you know, in a long time at Penn State. I mean, he's a big kid, 6'1", 200 pounds, ready to go. You know, he can fly. And DeAndre Tompkins is a kid they have coming in January who who may make an impact in the spring. He's a little bit lighter, but this kid can fly. I mean, he's a 4.4 kid. There's not too many of them floating around, and he can make a difference in the special teams game as well.
Nate, the impact that this decision has on the program, specifically for next year.
I mean, it's big, but it's not, I don't think it's necessarily catastrophic. I mean, you have some pieces on that offense that were either not healthy this year, that were expected to be big contributors.
Right.
You got a kid in Brent Wilkerson who, never played it down, but was expected to be a big contributor. And then, look at Geno Lewis's performance over the last couple of games. I mean, certainly, and to go out on that high note at Wisconsin, that's a big springboard for him moving into the offseason. So, there's no doubt, you can't tiptoe around the fact that Allen Robinson is going to be extremely important for Bill O'Brien and his staff to try to keep. Right. They have to do whatever they can to keep him. It's just they're not going to sulk if he goes.
Well, is Bill O'Brien, Mike, is he going to sit there and tell Allen Robinson not to go if he's a projected first-round pick?
No, I think Bill will give him the information.
Right.
But right. For a wide receiver, I want to know from you two guys. I mean, we've seen it some. We've seen Brenneman and Belton used different ways as receivers. If Allen goes, we'd see more of that even maybe.
I don't think you'd see Bill Belton as a pure wide receiver.
Oh, no, but they use him. There are a lot of different ways.
There's a lot of creativity in this offense.
Absolutely.
And he talks all the time about a matchup defense. This is also a matchup offense. Right. I mean, there's 3-4 tight ends on the field at any given time. You saw that at Syracuse before Matt Lehman got hurt. I think there's a lot of weapons. It's just there's no big game breaker that we see right now like Allen Robinson.
And you're going to have less hurdles for Christian Hackenberg to get those guys the ball as well. He's going to, the absorption that this guy can make in just the spring practices alone, he should be making exponential steps.
That brings me to my next point. Christian Hackenberg, obviously a great year for him. Another Fitz, Craig Fitzgerald, he's going to undergo that weight program in the offseason, which he did not because he arrived here in June of last year. What can we expect from him come next year if he does go through that program and progresses?
Well, typically the biggest jump that a player has is between his first and second year. Now, obviously, he set the bar very high for himself, and it's going to be very difficult to put up the same amount of numbers. Yes, but that jump can be made. I mean, a lot more time in the playbook, and I think that's going to expand what Bill O'Brien and the offense can really do for the next year. Is to expand that playbook to get more guys involved and to really get everybody more on the same page.
Every snap that kid takes is a step towards his future, and I think that it's funny for me at least, and I think that you guys could probably agree. When you watch this kid this year, all I could think about was evaluating him for 2 years down the line. I wasn't even thinking about him and what he was accomplishing this season. I was thinking about, wow, this kid is going to be so good. He's going to be really, really good in a couple of years.
Yeah, and you looked at the quarterbacks that he went up against that were juniors, seniors,
Absolutely.
and he's already better than
Absolutely.
them. I mean, just the tools to see a guy step up in the pocket, climb the pocket, and really, deliver a strike like he threw to Eugene Lewis. I think he did that in the Wisconsin game, but also in the Syracuse game. I mean, it's just plays that should not be made by a true freshman, and he's really taken that big step.
Two final questions for you. We'll start with you on this, Fitz. In terms of the Big Ten, where does Penn State fit in that, I guess, in the conference? Where do they fit? Obviously, Ohio State's up here. But other than Ohio State, can Penn State get to that level of Ohio State or just underneath of them in the coming year?
Well, I think that the thing about the sanctions is you expected Penn State to fall a little bit each year and eventually end up, with the depth issues and talent issues that they would have had near the bottom.
Have they, though, in these first years?
They really haven't. I mean, it really hasn't been a long time. I mean, it feels like forever to a lot of people around Penn State, but it really hasn't been a long time. So, Penn State is hovering just below where they were before the sanctions, I think. The Big Ten, Ohio State, you mentioned it, way up here, and it's going to be a while until Penn State can maybe catch them. But, beat Michigan. They beat Wisconsin. They probably should have beaten Nebraska. These are teams that are right in that next tier. And, Ohio State, Michigan State are going to play this weekend, top of the conference for sure. But Penn State, can be in that mix very soon.
When you're competing and playing in close games with 30 less initial scholarship players than your counterparts, I think it's, first of all, it's an indictment on the rest of the league. But but second of all,
Don't go Paul Feinbaum on us over here.
I'm sorry. But second of all, it shows what Bill O'Brien and his staff have been capable of. I mean, smoke and mirrors is an understatement, for some of the things that
Well,
they've
you
been
kind of
able
heard
to.
that after the Indiana game. I mean, he brought that up. I've never heard him bring the sanctions up like that before.
And that was a moment of weakness for
Right,
him.
right.
He didn't mean to do that.
Right.
He doesn't want people to think that he's making excuses for coming up short. He thinks that with 30 less people, he can still beat a lot of these programs in the Big Ten. It's just a matter of actually doing it now. And I think that as the scholarship numbers come back up and they get the players that they want on the recruiting trail, that's going to change what the level of expectation he has for the perception of the program. He's going to expect fans to expect them to win those games.
And you mentioned poker earlier. You can beat a better set of cards by bluffing them out of the hand.
Absolutely.
And I think Bill O'Brien has done that a lot this year, last year as well. And I think if you play at the right time, you choose your spots, play at the right time, you can be right there.
Final,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a quick addition is that these two hires, we don't know who they're going to be, but I think there's a commonality among them. They're both going to let Bill O'Brien be more of a coach, more of an offensive coordinator, more of a head coach, more of football-oriented things. I think they will advance him more in that direction.
Yeah, I think when you look at Charlie Fisher, the quarterback's coach, is there space on this roster or this coaching staff for a quarterback's coach? Because Bill O'Brien is the guy that coaches the quarterbacks.
Right.
I mean, no disrespect intended for Coach Fisher. Bill O'Brien's the guy that recruits the quarterbacks, he coaches the quarterbacks. And that's,
Can Bill coach the quarterback, be offensive coordinator, and be head coach?
You have to also remember, and I think that this is important. When Bill O'Brien was bringing in and assembling this coaching staff, it was under the worst conditions. He didn't have a lot of time. They were in the thick of the recruiting season. I mean,
He was on a Super Bowl run.
absolutely.
Yeah.
He had to assemble a staff very, very quickly. I think that he's built up the cachet, to kind of pick and choose who he wants now, exactly, for his needs, whatever they are.
and they know what they're getting into now.
Absolutely.
Final question for you. We'll start with Mike. Come the blue-white game in April, how many more changes do we see to the overall program that Bill O'Brien is the chief of right now?
You take the number of changes to this point and you square it or cube it. It's not going to stop. And from our perspective, I think that it's so much fun. It's so interesting.
It's fascinating.
It's something we haven't seen, and he's a smart guy. He's succeeding, and so it's entertaining to write about, to talk about. As amazing as it was in a lot of ways in Paterno's run, this is different in every other single way.
And I
So
think
a lot of changes.
what's important to remember too is that we don't know half of them.
Right.
The things that are going on there. You're made aware of them months after they've taken place. And I mean, I think that it's a treasure hunt of sorts. Trying to figure it all out.
Sean, how excited should fans be come signing day? I mean, how pumped up should they be for what awaits them then?
Well, when they got the scholarships back from the sanctions, I think that was a big step forward for this class. Maybe won't show up on paper like it will the 2015 class, which is really, I think, the one to be excited about the most. But 2014, Penn State has an opportunity to close strong. It was a little late to identify those targets, a little late to start going after new guys. But if you can close on a guy like a five-star Thomas Holly, defensive tackle out of Brooklyn, who's very high on Penn State, and you can surround him with other key playmakers, I think that's going to pay off moving forward because perception is a lot in recruiting. And to bring in these big guys, you can argue all day about the recruiting rankings and how subjective they are, but kids read them and kids want to jump on board with the similar and their peers.
Well, obviously a lot of changes are going to be undergone here at Penn State within the football program. We have signing day coming up, the blue-white game, and then Penn State kicks off their season in Ireland against Central Florida. A special thanks to my three guests here, Sean Fitz of Lions247.com, Nate Bauer of Blue White Illustrated, and Mike Poorman of StateCollege.com. Make sure you read their stuff. Again, three of the best guys on the beat. Thanks, guys.
I don't know if that's true.
Appreciate it. Make sure you tune in to more, psucommedia.com, Center County Report. Thanks a lot and have a good night.